record.
Okay, got it. Right, so hello everyone.
Hiya.
This is the first of the artist talks for Breathing Out, and today we are joined by the lovely Lisa Pettibone and my fellow curator Catherine. So hi everyone.
Hello.
So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with a few questions, or do you want to have a look around the exhibition? What do you fancy, Lisa?
Oh, I'll have a quick look around. I didn't realize you had outdoor areas now.
Yeah, look at
Catherine
this.
and I,
It's great, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, mate, we're going to be talking to a couple of the artists as well. He's done some of the sculptures as well, which is pretty cool. I'm really looking forward to that. So
great.
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so we designed the space with sort of nature and contemporary modern society like colliding or combined,
Okay.
I suppose I should say. All right, should we head in?
Yeah.
There we
Yeah.
are.
So,
It's
yeah,
it's a beautiful space, so we have to say thanks to Tom
100%. Tom Dale, well done.
because when we started talking about it, we had this idea that we wanted something that was clean, but at the same time part of nature, and yet would somehow look almost scientific with a nod to technology. And I think he's managed to, and along with Lawrence's drawings, he's created exactly what we envisaged. So
Wow.
I'm going to head upstairs.
So Lisa's
to
work is just by the
find
stairs.
Lisa's
Just by the
place.
stairs. Just by the stairs, I think, on the back wall.
So was this gallery was specially built then for the
Yeah.
exhibition? Wow, amazing.
Yeah, it was yeah. It was a lot. It was a lot of conceptual meetings we had about it.
Yeah.
There was a lot.
And there's quite a lot because we it didn't occur to us to like change the
Yeah.
space, and then we had a meeting with Tom, and Tom the engineer who's responsible for the space, and we were like, oh, can we remove a wall or whatever? And Tom was like, well, actually, we can, within reason, we can do a lot of different things to the space.
Yeah.
So that's when we thought, wow, can we have like grass? Can we have rocks? And we thought about a water feature at some point.
We get a bit carried away. We get a bit carried away, don't we?
The budget being time, basically.
Yeah, I mean, one of the conceptual drawings was a river, I think. Didn't Lawrence draw a river going right through the middle or something? Yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, so yeah, we're at the top here, looking at Lisa's work via the rest of the top floor. So should we kick off the questions? So Lisa, do you want to just briefly introduce yourself, roughly the work that you do and how long you've been an artist, that sort of thing?
Okay. Yeah. My name's Lisa Pettibone, and I spent many years as a graphic designer, and then by the time I did an MA in Art and Science at Central St. Martin's, I sort of really switched over to being a full-time artist in kind of 2016. And a lot of my work relates to natural forces, and an interest in space science has grown over the last 4 years, and I've been involved in a couple of space-related projects, and this one was one of them. And just to tell you what you're looking at here, this little object that's in the middle of this sort of photo montage is called Verdant, and it's currently sitting on the International Space Station, and it'll be there. It's coming back sometime in December, but it's been there since February 19th, I think, this year. And it's through the Moon Gallery Foundation, which sent out an open call to artists. And I was obviously on the right email list and saw the open call and kind of jumped at the chance when I saw it.
I know, you just be like, what? Gotta do that.
I've got to do this. So it was an open call to produce works. They were looking for to fill a grid of 8 by 8 squares, 1 centimeter squares, with tiny pieces of artwork from international artists all over the world, which this particular gallery would be the first gallery of its kind in space. And the goal of their mission, the Moon Gallery Foundation, is to actually put a similar gallery with 100 artists on the moon, which they're hoping to do in the next couple of years. And so they had an opportunity, I'm not quite sure how it came about, but they had an opportunity to put this little gallery on the space station. And it was a good way to test the idea of how you would put something like this together. And there's a lot of technical problems about putting things in space. And so they partnered with a company called NanoRacks, who supply the space station with a lot of their materials, experiments going up. So they'll box up all of the biological experiments and other supplies and such. And they kind of manage part of that process on the resupply rockets. And so they, the Moon Gallery partnered with them. And so luckily I got chosen. There was no particular theme except for it just had to fit in this 1 centimeter square space. So I think initially the thrill of being able to make something that was could experience a piece of work that could experience microgravity, but virtually very, very low gravity on the International Space Station. Was just really such an interesting idea. So I started thinking of things that might move, how they would move in space, and how could I make something move in a small space, and what kind of materials would I be interested in using. I work with glass quite a lot, and I mainly do sculpture work. And so I was sort of drawn to the idea of putting something glass in space, mainly because of the light. I mean, I won't ever see it, but I know that the light is very different in space. It's unfiltered by our atmosphere, and apparently it's much whiter and brighter. And I love the idea of glass interacting with light in that way. But I really felt like I wanted to say something beyond that. And the funny thing is the image on the top of this is actually a picture of the tree outside my studio. And I started thinking about how important it was to, as we explore in space, to appreciate what we have here and how we'll bring aspects of that with us and why it's important. And I started thinking about the color green. And I live in a place in Surrey, which is incredibly green, and I love it. And I thought I would really miss that in space. You have very little contact with green things, except for maybe little experiments here and there. And I started thinking about how aesthetically and actually biologically we're really connected to the color green. If it wasn't for photosynthesis and the chlorophyll molecule, we probably wouldn't exist. So I started thinking about how I could structure my little sculpture to reflect some of that, that particular relationship with chlorophyll. So I looked at the core aspects of the or the structure of the chlorophyll molecule, and it's one magnesium atom surrounded by 4 nitrogen atoms. And so that became the kind of that helped dictate the shape of what I was doing. And what I did is, luckily, I'm such a pack rat. I had some old beads from various projects from years ago stuffed in the back of a drawer, and I knew they were there. And I started playing around with these things because I thought, well, if I use some thread, I'll be able to sort of tether these things together, and wouldn't it be interesting to see how they moved in microgravity? So I tested different sizes of the central bead. I actually had somebody who makes beads try to make something for me, but she couldn't make it small enough. I'm telling you, it's really hard to make something under 1 centimeter. So in the end, this is slightly longer than 1 centimeter. It's about 114, 115, depending on which way you turn it. And I thought, well, that's good, because I wanted to see how it molds into the space. It would be interesting to see how it reacts. And I found these lovely green beads, and I had some fluorescent thread in the studio. And so I had to build a model to photograph to send them for the competition, basically. So I only perfected it a little bit more, and used, some glue, which they approved. You had to get your materials approved. And so it ended up being quite a simple thing to make, but just very fiddly to make. So that's how the actual object came together. So in this image, you're looking at a picture that was taken on the ISS on the bottom, kind of looking at the sun just about to rise, and you've got an aurora forming as a result of the Earth's magnetic field. It's sort of, you get these lovely auroras, and so it's that combination of our lovely green planet and the fact that space really won't have the kind of environment that we really appreciate. So yeah, so that's the sort of basics of the idea.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I mean, you touched on a lot, obviously, about our connection to the planet and stuff like that. And I know, like, just because I've known you for a couple of years now, you talk a lot about the importance of artists engaging with space, and how it's important for scientists to engage with artists during space exploration projects, etc. Do you think it should be the same for artists, you know, engaging with climate change and engaging with scientific professionals as well when it comes to climate change?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think all these things kind of roll together. I think the wonderful thing about putting things in space, and even putting us in space, is the kind of perspective it gives you on where you're from and what's unique and special about it. And I think that's a benefit that it's difficult to get any other way. So when you cast your sort of creative mind of, you know, out of away from the planet, and you imagine seeing, you know, if you had that experience, you know, this sort of not just deep appreciation, you just realize how incredibly connected you are to the whole process, and how important it is to preserve what we have, and actually how fragile our existence here is. And I think getting that kind of perspective by looking at when we compare ourselves and what we have with the rest of the cosmos, it is actually quite frightening. And it seems really ridiculous that we're making a mess of it, because we've got this absolute jewel of an existence here, and that we've been so careless does seem really astounding to me.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I like engaging with space science and space related works as well, because I think space you know, points out that, you know, what are we doing to ourselves and our planet to think that how could we be so cavalier with our own existence. But also from a scientific perspective as well, space, I've always thought that looking outwardly into space is also an incredibly good way to look inwardly as well. Again, because you just realize how unbelievably lucky we are, and again, like how we really must safeguard our existence, because we're really not doing that. And that's kind of what my work is about, in part, that I've submitted into Breathing Out as well as sort of lots of different other climate based subjects. I was a bit curious to know whether you feel like, because obviously this work does, you know, touch on climate change, as we've said. Do you have any more plans to continue developing work to do with climate change, or are you going down a different road? Both answers are fine. It doesn't have to be about climate change.
You know, I've asked myself the same question, to be honest, because I really did like thinking about this, and it really is tied in with this particular piece. And I find myself talking about this piece of work a lot and thinking, how can I go forward with some of these ideas? And it's become kind of a nice vehicle for talking about this particular subject we've talked about, you know, in the guise of, so I think I told you earlier, I gave a talk at NASA in last month, and I was able to present this project and another space related project and tell them about it. And it just felt like a really great forum to talk about some of these ideas about how we are going to reflect in space exploration will cause us to reflect a lot more on what's happening on our planet. And I think the other thing that other people have mentioned is that space exploration is also a really good experimental basis for how we sustainably live in space. And we have to examine and kind of, you've got to look at best behavior in space in terms of survival. And a lot of these things are the same things we should be thinking about here on Earth. So it may be that space exploration gives us a chance to develop ways to reflect on our habits here, but also give us new solutions for sustainability. And I'm really hoping that that's what's going to happen. I don't have any specific projects planned around this, but I'd certainly like to get involved in other things that are related to space exploration and also sustainability in general. So yeah, I'll watch this space. Hopefully something will will develop along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I find that sorry, Catherine, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I'm going to play devil's advocate, just because this was one of the questions that came up when we did the off-grid soil, water, and technology, that one viewer asked, why are we wasting so much money on space when we need to save the planet? And one of the obvious things that comes up is that, on one level, if you're talking about people traveling for tourism into space, it does seem like a waste of resources. But on the other hand, all of the space exploration and the fact that you're having to work out how to live in a harsh environment, like you said, is creating these opportunities to test out technology. And I just wanted to gonna ask you what you felt about both those issues, the idea how you would respond to somebody saying it's a whole lot of waste of money.
Yeah, I do hear that a lot, and I sympathize as well, because we all want to know why aren't we spending more to control this particular problem that we've created. Personally, I'd rather have the defense budget cut, but I'll explain to you why I think that space exploration is actually going to go hand in hand with sustainability. For instance, the European Space Agency just launched I think they're doing research and investigating how to create an energy source from space by harnessing the rays of the sun through, I think it's microwaves back down to the Earth, in order to give us other sources of power. And this is part of our problem, is that we don't have sustainable energy resources. So, and I actually do know another person who's working on another project for ESO, which is involving a giant sort of solar array that will actually push sunlight back into a focused place on Earth. And so they're thinking of different ways to intensify the energy that we get from our own sun. So these are really important developments, and they can only really happen from space, apparently. So along with that, I think, like I said before, the perspective that you get when you step into the idea of the space exploration and space science is you do get, and Hannah's familiar with this idea of the overview effect. And I think it would be really useful for, many important people to actually have the experience of seeing the Earth from afar and seeing how beautiful it is, this tiny little blue dot hanging in space. And the kind of psychological effects of that experience, I think, would be an important thing for many, many more people to experience, in order to give a better perspective on what the priorities ought to be on Earth. So those are just a couple of things. I think there's probably a lot more. I mean, I know that, like I said, the experiments that they're doing in space are helping us think about how to sustainably use water and recycle water, for instance. So it does seem like a lot of money to spend, and it's all about sort of the thrill of pushing big rockets into space. But I actually think it's going to be a lot more than that. But it'll take some time to convince people, I think, through these particular projects, you know, why that is. So at least that's the way I hope it will grow. It will open our minds up and our technologically and spiritually to think, seeing ourselves in a different way.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I agree with Lisa, Ari, that I think it's kind of narrow-minded to just write off all of space travel, space science, and astrophysics because it costs too much money. I think it's a bit careless, but that's just me. I think it's a nuanced argument. So, but no,
Well, I can
it is an
understand.
argument.
Sorry.
It is an argument that does come up when you start working with institutions that deal with space travel, institutions that deal with any kind of space science. There is a little bit of animosity in the scientific community because of that. But you know, it's just, you know, takes lots of different opinions to make things work. So yeah, it's just, I do find some professionals who work in space having to fight back a little bit, which is a shame, but you know, it's understandable.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose it's that thing, isn't it? Oh, sorry, Lisa.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's unfortunate that we have to, in some ways, divide where we put our money. And like you said, the defense budget, or there's a lot of other places, depending on where you live, obviously, and what you have going on, that could be changed to support it, because there's a lot that has come from just extreme science, if you want to put it that way, even that, you know, unless you really push things to the nth degree, you tend not to come across anything that's really, really new. And I think that probably would count across all aspects of science research. But on that level, on that one, my next question for you is, do you feel that there's any practice where you live? Have you seen anything that's being done well to help climate change where you live?
Okay. I'm trying to think. I mean, I suppose it's being done pretty widely most places, but I just got back from the States and they're not doing it there, which is like food recycling. So we have a little food bin that we put our leftover scraps and stuff. And I've just gotten into, I think a lot of these really good habits with sustainability are just basically habits. So you just get used to doing things in a routine way. And at first, when they in Surrey, I don't know, I think they've been doing it for the last 8-10 years, something like that. It was hard to make that change at first because it was sort of like, oh gosh, you know, we have to get bin liners, and it all seems really kind of like flimsy excuses now. But you know, it's just really such an easy habit to get into, to recycle your food waste into a separate bin. And so when I go to the States now, I sort of take everybody off and say, why aren't they doing this here? They have like disposals in their sinks, and they just flip a switch and it grinds up, and you know, they don't even know what happens to it, basically. And I just think that, you know, that's the thing. If you handle your food, then you do know what's happening with it. You know, you see how much you're wasting. When you see that bin fill up with all of your, you know, chopped up leftovers or uneaten food, you think, hey, how come that happened? You know? And I think if we had more contact with how we deal with food waste, or, you know, I think in the States, they could learn a lot from that. So that's sort of just one thing I know that's I've been really proud of that we actually do here. And I think other little habits, I think there's a lot to do with even for me, and I talk to other artists as well, especially people like me who uses a kiln. I have a couple kilns in my studio, and I've had to develop different habits about how often I fire my kiln and how much I have in it when I do fire it. And you know, just trying to group more things together, even though it takes a little bit more time to wait until I have certain items that can all go in at the same temperature or whatever. It feels more and more important for me to do that all the time. So I think as talking to other artists, they're trying to make little adjustments here and there to reuse things. I mean, artists are constantly reusing things. I mean, I'm a terrible pack rat. I keep cardboard boxes for ages, and I'm now using, I reuse all my packaging material maybe several times in the end. And, you know, I'm just doing that more, like I said before, as a matter of habit. I just don't throw stuff out so that I can find a reuse for it later. It does mean that my storage is pretty packed to the top. But I think it's really, really good to be quite frugal with everything that all the materials that you have.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, the interesting thing is that there's always so this was a question I remember years ago at my kids' school in St. Albans, where people were using leftover plastic things to make craft, and yet and then there was the question of, well, wouldn't that be better being recycled and going back into the system? So then you're looking at, you're constantly having to make these judgments. But then on the other hand, is it not better to use something like that and then hopefully recycle it than going out and buying new stuff that have just been shipped over from China? So there's all these like little micro decisions you have to make all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
agree.
it's true. I mean, one thing I really like to do is I buy lots of used stuff on eBay, you know, clothes, technology, all sorts of things. And I think, you know, I do realize that during COVID, I thought there was a big uptick in eBay usage. And I had wondered if it was because people were, you know, kind of worried financially, et cetera. And so they're kind of turning to eBay more often. But I think I think eBay's like this great sort of churning recycling thing, or it can be, that you can reuse something that somebody else doesn't have a use for again, instead of buying a new item. And keeping things out of landfill this way, as much as possible. So it should be really championed, you know, this way of looking at consumerism, that using a used thing is actually preferable in some ways than buying a new one, and we should be thinking of it that way.
Like the beads you used in Verdant, right? Those are reused beads, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't even remember what I made with them initially, but I just liked the look of them, and they stayed with me. They're probably 15 years old when I bought those, you know. So some of the only work I could do when my kids were young, I got into doing sort of beaded things for a while, making necklaces for people and various things. It was a little creative outlet, and of course they were glass, you know. And so yeah, I tend to not throw materials away, creative materials away, for sure.
Okay. I think one more question, or unless Catherine, you've got anything else you want to?
No, that was really interesting. So now I'll let you.
Yeah. Just one more question, really, because we've got to wrap it up soon. Is what have you got planned for 2023, or have you got anything happening?
Let's see. Gosh, I've got a project which I'm planning with about 7 other artists that will be happening in May. It's a group that I met through doing Collect at Somerset House last February, and they were also artists that were participating. And so we're having a group show that's going to happen during London Crowd, and I'll make an announcement about that at some point. So I'm actually co-curating that, and so it seems like it's already full on. A lot of stuff to organize. We're doing publicity before we even have work that we're completely sure of, etc. And I'm just preparing some work now to do maybe a new screen print series based on some images that some digital images of old glass plates from that were taken of the Andromeda Galaxy by Hubble. Yeah, I went to the Carnegie Observatory while I was down, you know, near NASA, and I got a lovely tour of the facilities there. It's not really open to the public, but there's this wonderful sort of vaults where there's all these glass plates and beautiful drawers, etc. And I chose to get digitized. I'm hoping to do a screen print, I think, coming up. And yeah, I've got some little projects I'm working on, and I'm constantly working on new projects in the studio. And oh yeah, I know I'm going to be artist in residence at the at UCA in Farnham on their glass and ceramics program for 6 months from February. Oh, nice. So yeah, they have fantastic facilities. So I'm really looking forward to having a library at my disposal, which would be wonderful. And also having, a fantastic sort of selection of kilns and other equipment available. And I'm hoping to make larger work because of that.
Yeah, you've got a lot going on there. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it'll be fun time in the winter, actually. Good time I like starting things in the winter time because nobody's bothering you. There's hardly any exhibitions going on. So it's a nice time to dig into creative projects.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about your work and about the exhibition. Yeah, so we're gonna be having some talks with other artists that are in the exhibition. And yeah, it's gonna be really great. So tune in for next time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having a good look around. I confess I hadn't seen it yet, and now I'm super curious. I want to see everything. So yeah, I'll go online right now and have a look.
Yeah, fab. All right,
lovely. And also our the couple of talks we had with various speakers are all on the YouTube channel now. So there you go. Okay. So you can pass them on to anyone else who's interested as well. Thank you very, very much for contributing to the exhibition. It meant a lot to us.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.